I'm at me upstairs.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to everyone in the room and everyone online. So good to see so many of you in here after 2 years and in spite of the weather that we're having today. And I know you made it out today for this very special evening that we have. This program entitled A Conversation with Justice David Batts. And I know you're all looking forward to the conversation, but I know this conversation is going to be extremely enlightening because it's about his book, which I have right here, and I managed to get it autographed just a while ago. So this conversation is about Justice Batts' extremely well-written book entitled The Law and the Constitution for Every Jamaican. Now, I've read the book, and even though I have some legal training, I know that this book is going to appeal to everyone, whether you're a lawyer or a non-lawyer. And I think that that is just so important, because as a lawyer, we know that persons who are not trained in the law need to understand the implications of our legal system, need to understand what their rights are under the Constitution. And the way in which this book is written is so readable that it will not only appeal to persons who are trained in the law students, future law students, but really anyone. It's written in a very readable manner that you can get a full grasp and appreciation of some very important issues. So if you haven't yet read it, I highly recommend it. And so tonight is also the launch of this important publication. And so I know the conversation will focus on some of the very important issues that arise here. So welcome again to Mona Law, and congratulations, Justice Batts, on this extremely well-written book, which I know will have a significant impact for all of us here in Jamaica. So as we move the program along, I know that the Honorable Chief Justice, Brian Sykes, had hoped to be here, but unfortunately he's due to travel. He's unable to be here with us in person, but he has sent us a recorded message. And so we'd like to play that message for you right now. As we
The Honorable
Yes, as we continue. Thank you.
Senior Puny Judge of the Supreme Court of Judicature of Jamaica and the moderator for this evening's event. The Honorable Mr. Justice David Batts, Puny Judge of the Supreme Court of Judicature of Jamaica and the author of the text, The Law and the Constitution for Every Jamaican, judges of the Court of Appeal, judges of the Supreme Court of Judicature of Jamaica, who are present in person and on electronic platforms, His Honor Mr. Chester Crooks, Chief Judge of the Parish Court, judges of the Parish Court of Jamaica in person and on electronic platforms, Professor Shazida Ali, Dean of the Faculty of Law, University of the West Indies, Mona Campus, Mona Kingston, Jamaica, and other campuses of the University of the West Indies, distinguished faculty of the Faculty of Law, staff and students of the University of the West Indies, faculty, students, and staff from other universities, other educational institutions in Jamaica and across the Caribbean region, specially invited guests. Good evening. It has been said that a well-informed electorate is essential for democracy to survive and thrive. The online Webster's Dictionary advises that one of the meanings of well-informed is having extensive knowledge, especially of current topics and events. Some of the current topics and events being discussed against the backdrop of the Jamaican Constitution are A, whether Jamaica should remain a monarchy, B, should persons charged with specified offenses be granted bail, and C, should dress codes exist for students in high schools. Regardless of where one stands in these debates, it is necessary for our persons, our citizens, great and small, to have an excellent grasp of the fundamentals of the Jamaican Constitution in order that the debate can proceed with accurate information. This evening's conversation with the Honorable Mr. Justice David Batts is a significant event. It marks the formal introduction of the book, The Law and the Constitution for Every Jamaican. This book is simple without being simplistic, clear without being childish, and readable without losing the gravity and the importance of the subject matter. The book has successfully taken our Constitution from the lofty heights of the legislature and the law courts into the homes and hearts of all citizens. As the Honorable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders, President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, stated in his foreword to this book, and I quote, "It is not enough that only judges and lawyers, parliamentarians, and government officials should understand what is the Constitution and how it operates. Ideally, every citizen should have a basic understanding of the highest law." End of quote. In one sense, President Saunders' view is aspirational when he stated that, ideally, every citizen should have a basic understanding of the highest law. This book by Justice Batts has turned that ideal, a mere 130 pages, excluding the table of contents, forward, endnotes, and citations, into reality without omitting the essentials for understanding the basic constitutional structure of Jamaica. I dare say that it provides an excellent framework within which to understand other constitutions within the Commonwealth Caribbean that are based on the Westminster model. I have no doubt that anyone who reads this book, even the specialist constitutional lawyer and the judge, will leave more enlightened. Encourage your family members, neighbors, and friends to read the book. Discuss it. Use it as the basis for understanding our governmental structure. As I close, I wish to extend my personal congratulations to Justice Batts for the production of this book. I wish you all the best for a successful event this evening.
Chief Justice Sykes, so distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I will now hand over to the moderator for this evening, the Honorable Mrs. Justice Carol Lawrence Beswick, and she will guide you through the program. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. I welcome you all this evening. Friends here, very distinguished, and friends online, welcome to you all. We in Jamaica have been having some tumultuous weather, but we have braved the storm because we so appreciate Justice Batts. We will swim any river, climb any mountain just to see and be with him. So I encourage our friends online who may be having dry weather to send greetings to us by way of Mentimeter and in the chat. Our focus this evening is on the book, The Law and Constitution for Every Jamaican, and on its author, the Honorable Mr. Justice David Batts. It is so heartwarming to see such a wide cross-section of persons who are interested in sharing in a conversation on the law and the Constitution with Justice Batts, and who are also interested in getting some understanding of this great thinker himself and the workings of his mind, and indeed of what contributed to his successes. The book, The Law and Constitution for Every Jamaican, is his brainchild and is already gaining popularity as a must-read item. Justice Batts has said that he will regard this publication as being a success if it causes even one Jamaican to say, "I now know and understand my role, obligation, and rights." From the positive feedback and support he has been receiving, there is every indication that we can declare the publication a success, even according to his goal. The students, full of questions and enthusiasm, have been surrounding Justice Batts. He is, in fact, on the verge of acquiring pop star status. His family and friends are here in their numbers, exuding joy and happiness at his accomplishments. His colleagues are here in person and online, showing their respect and good wishes for him. The learned judges who are with us hail from the parish courts, the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, from courts outside of Jamaica, including the Caribbean Court of Justice. And we have the privilege of having retired judges who have seen fit to come out to share with Justice Batts. Our own Chief Justice is outside of Jamaica on official duties, but nonetheless, he has sent his greetings, which we have just heard. And he had also already expressed publicly his agreement with the sentiments of His Excellency the Governor General, who also publicly commended the publication in glowing terms and who regards it as being very useful, especially at this stage of our country's development. But these endorsements really come as no surprise, because the book is written in such a manner that it can be readily understood, and it touches on topics that make for compelling reading for anyone with even the slightest interest in the rights, duties, and responsibilities of citizens of Jamaica. So what is it in particular about the book that has caused this positive vibe? What is it about Justice Batts that made him produce this gem? Did his upbringing by his very supportive and ever-present parents, George and Clover Batts, contribute to that? His siblings and his children, his wife, Michelle, other family members, how were they a part of realizing this dream to produce the book? Was it his years spent at Kingston College, at the University of the West Indies? Was it his colleagues, his friends, that filled him with the fire and encouragement necessary to sit and pen this book? What was it? Or what combination was it? Well, my dear distinguished friends, we are about to hear all about the inspiration, the challenges, the successes which together have culminated in the law and constitution for every Jamaican. The conversation which we will now witness and share in promises to be ever so enlightening and inspiring. Senior lecturer Miss Tracy Robinson is well known internationally as an expert in constitutional law and is respected as being dedicated to ensuring a deep understanding of law in general. Her humility masks her extensive learning. Justice Batts, too, carries no airs about him, just a love of the law. So we know that with these two erudite scholars, fueled by the combination of learning, love of the law, and humility, this conversation will let us truly understand and appreciate so much more. But before we launch into that conversation, we have the absolutely distinct privilege and pleasure of the Jamaican folk singers sharing with us 3 of their pieces. And so I now invite them to come forward. They are a world-famous group. They will set the stage. They will remind us that we are here to enjoy this special evening as friends and family. It must not be lost on us that associated with the singers is Justice Batts' mother, Mrs. Clover Batts, as well as the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Law, Dr. Colleen Lewis. I now welcome the Jamaican folk singers to entertain us as family.
But me not go hold your hand. COVID-19 say keep your distance and be protection. So make we wave and smile, yeah. So make we wave and smile. This long time, yeah, we never see you. Come make we walk and talk. This long time, yeah, we never see you. Come make we walk and talk. Me and this side, you and the other side, 6 feet apart. So we walk and talk, yeah. So we walk and talk. The next time when we get to see you, then we will wheel and turn. The next time when we get to see you, then we will wheel and turn. Peel and jump, crossing up a tree top, pick up the blossom. Then we will hold your hand, yeah. Then we will hold your hand. Then we will wheel and turn till we tumble down. Then we will hold your hand, yeah. Then we will wheel and turn till we tumble down. Then we will hold your hand, yeah. La 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 la. shine tonight. Come make me dance and sing. You there rock so, and a banyan tree. Me there rock so, and a banyan tree. Ladies make curtsy, gentlemen make bow. Ladies make curtsy, gentlemen make bow. Me there rock so, and a banyan tree. Me there rock so, and a banyan tree. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Then we join hands and dance around and round. Then we join hands and dance around and round. We there rock so, you there rock so, and a banyan tree. We there rock so, you there rock so, and a banyan tree. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Something in my heart, like a stream running down, make me feel so happy as can be. When I think of Jesus and what he has done for me, something in my heart, like a stream running down. Something in my heart, like a stream running down, make me feel so happy as can be. When I think of Jesus and what he has done for me, something in my heart, like a stream running down. When I think of Jesus and what he has done for me, something in my heart, like a stream running
Thank you so much, folk singers, for that walk down the cultural memory lane. We as a people need to hear more of that music to keep our culture alive. It was really wonderful, sprinkled as it was with the love of Mrs. Batts. And I did see some heads bobbing, and I suspect that there were some among us who, like myself, were finding it hard to resist the temptation to do a little drop foot to some of those. It was really good. I thank them on behalf of us all. So let us now join our senior lecturer, Miss Tracy Robinson, as she converses with Justice Batts, jurist and author, to give us a better insight into the measure of the man. I encourage you, our friends online, to send your questions and comments. We expect to be able to address most of them at the end of the conversation.
Thank you very much, Justice Bezic. It is a pleasure to see all of you, and welcome Justice Batts to the Faculty of Law. You were here some time ago, but the surroundings didn't look like this.
Not here.
I'm just doing a mic check for Justice Batts as well. I'm just going to ask those who spent time at the Faculty of Law when we were in a corner in the Arts building, in the Faculty of Arts. Anybody here? Literally a corner. Things have changed dramatically over the last few decades. And can I thank also the folk singers and express our deep gratitude to you. You know, as they were singing, I thought, how many of us see each other now and think, long time, me never see you. We can't always wheel and turn, but it's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to be in each other's presence again. And Justice Batts, I wanted you to allow me, so I'm craving your indulgence, to introduce you to everyone through a few images first. So there are very strict rules about disclosure if you're a lawyer in respect of the other side, and we are not in court. So he's unaware of the images. So Justice Batts, you were born in Falmouth. Your parents are stuck in traffic, but will soon hopefully have a chance to meet your mother and father, George and Clover Batts. And you moved briefly from the school which belonged to Mrs. Gilchrist, and you moved to Miss Gilchrist, and you moved to Iona Prep in St. Mary, which she thought would offer you more opportunity because she saw great potential in you. Your mother said to me that one day she saw you quietly sitting at about 7 or 8 years old, and she said, "What's going on? What's happening with you?" And you replied, "I'm thinking." You completed your primary school in Kingston. You went to Shortwood practicing. Your parents had several children, I think, heading to high school. You moved from Shortwood practicing to North Street. My good colleague over there is in purple, and my guess is that there are other people associated with North Street, okay, who are in the room. You have, however, remained very connected to Shortwood, and I think particularly of your relationship with Shortwood United, the football club, and I'm told you can be found there every Saturday morning with a football team. From Shortwood, and you'll notice we're joined by particularly students from Jamaica College, and you know, I was struck, Justice Batts, that they said to me, we need our bags because we need to take notes. Can I ask you to guide my students in the first, second, and third years of the LLB program too? From your time at KC, you were a boy of strong views, very deeply held principled positions. Is that correct? You didn't join the cadets, and Justice Batts, you didn't join the cadets because you were not willing to give up your afro. For those who don't know, that this already tells us when Justice Batts was born and when he lived. And the Belfoot pants. KC won Schools Challenge, Justice Batts, 3 times during your years there. You were encouraged to train, to join, but you didn't. And you demurred, and I'm not sure you even remember today why you did. But I suspect it was some sense you had about what deeper learning meant, and you thought Schools Challenge wasn't it. What you did love was English literature, and you loved your literature teachers, excellent teachers, and it's not uncommon for you to begin your judgment with poetry or prose. Recently, one of Bob Marley's songs, your judgment in the full court's ruling in the 2019 NITS case begins. No chains around my feet, but I'm not free. I am down here in captivity in this concrete jungle. You continued, these words put to music by the Honorable Robert Nesta Marley, OM deceased, reflect the sentiment of many inner city dwellers. They suggest that independence from British colonial rule has not produced hoped for economic, social, and political liberation. Jamaica policymakers have, with varying prescriptions and mixed success, endeavored to address those concerns. Well, after KC, you end up at the University of the West Indies, and you were contemplating a life in the United Nations as you entered the faculty, not of law, but of social sciences. And in 1980, you joined the Faculty of Social Sciences, but just a year later, you transferred to the Faculty of Law. This faculty, as we remember, occupied this very undistinguished corner in the arts building, and you formed a study group. You formed a study group, Clive Mullins, Errol Gentles, and the then student Brian Saggs, later joined by Canute Brown. So my first question to you, people were probably asking, when is she going to ask a question? My first question to you is, why switch? Why switch to law, to the LLB degree after a year in the Faculty of Social Sciences? And for many of us who trained as lawyers, you know, there's law by desire, you know, there is law by accident, and there's law by pressure. Which one were you?
Well, good evening all. Good evening all. Tracy, I think it probably would be a mix of pressure and accident. Yes, pressure and accident. Well, I studied law. I didn't even know what a lawyer was really. I never gave much thought to getting a profession. In fact, most of my school life, I wanted to be a policeman. Right up to the 5th form in school. And this is how I thought I could best serve Jamaica. I had a relationship with a policeman in Farmer, Mr. Walker, and I reacquainted myself with him the other day. He's now retired, of course. We used to ride a bike. And we used to sit on our family home gate and look at him across the road, his beat involved in front of the parish church. And we talk with him and ask him for a ride on his bike. And one day he turns up at the house on Sunday and gave us, both myself and my brother, separately, a ride on his bike. I was disappointed because it wasn't the police bike he came with his private motorcycle. And I was scared to death, so that cured me of wanting to be a motorcycle. But I always had in mind, that's what I want to be, a police. But I did well in my exams at O levels, ended up in 6th form. At the end of 6th form, I was convinced I'd failed. I mean, the A-level exams were so hard that I actually applied for a job and got a job. And so that last summer after high school, I was in training at the insurance company in the West Indies to become an underwriter. I trained all summer, get in my desk, and then the results came out. And I've done very well, you know. So I asked Ms. Cox of the city. I said, look, I'll work here and enter university. And she said, no, go to university. She always told me, Mr. Banks, go to university. And you know, he'll probably give you a holiday job if you want, but go to university. But I just said a while ago, by that time now, you know, going in university, and I said, and I look at the different options, social sciences on board, you know, and international relations. So, yeah, man, can go and work in the United Nations and help of people in Africa. So that really was mandatory advice. So I entered the faculty with that in mind. And then, I guess this is where the peer pressure comes in. I am walking across the campus and I hear my name called. And there is Oliver Smith. I don't know anybody here knows Oliver Smith. We used to call him Half Pint. And so I don't know Oliver. Oliver was already studying law. Oliver had gone to KC, but he was a bigger boy then. And he come, what are you doing here? I said, well, international relations. I said, what were your subjects? What, you feel the exam, why you social science? So when I told him my grades, he said, man, come here for the law. And he literally, physically helped me and carried me across the building from the wall. Mrs. Stone was the secretary at the time. And I think Derek or Delroy, one of them was in the office at the time. I said, you have registered this man for law. But I said, no, this is November, it's too late. So they put in my application for a transfer right then and there. I'm just here standing there. I still wasn't convinced that I wanted to know that. And then I started studying and linked up with a friend of mine, Michael Roberts, named Froggy, who had been at case with me, and his dream all had been to do law from first one. He was in general arts. And he convinced me. He said, yeah, man, when you do law, you go to Barbados, you can't fund. So, you're going to transfer too. So come get the two of us transferred. So when the transfer was accepted, based on that, I win. I should tell you that my father had insisted that I get a profession. And when I told him I was going to do international, he said, what is that? What are you going to do? Teach? He said, go on the law, man. Go to law or some profession. And when I told him I was going to do it, he was very annoyed. So that didn't work to change my mind. I've always resisted oppression, should I call it that? where's Daddy? In Nigeria. So he had wanted me to do law, but I had resisted that. But the peer pressure you mentioned a while ago is really what did it. So I entered upon the study of law, not really knowing what I was about or why.
Not an uncommon story. The story of law by pressure/accident for many of us. So the Faculty of Law is now 50 years old, and you actually entered in the second decade. So you entered in 1981 and the faculty was established in 1970. I see Maurice Saunders, who was in that first class. So Hugh Woodin and Roy Marshall, who were very much the authors of the system which we now have, they said they thought that LLB students should study in the first year the nature and function of law with special reference, I'm quoting, to developing societies, the development of the West Indian legal systems and institutions, constitutional law and government with special reference to the development towards independence, and two non-legal subjects, Caribbean history, economics, political science. If you did political science, you met Professor Trevor Monroe, sociology. And the report also made a case for extramural legal education. And they said this should be for civil servants, for social workers, police officers, and the general public. And they said, this is the two key founders, that we can't overemphasize the importance and value, particularly in developing societies, of courses which deal with the relationship between the citizen and the state and the application of the spirit of the rule of law to the exercise of power. Your book echoes many of those themes about what a student should learn in their very first year of law, these foundational ideas for legal education, talking about the historical development of legal institutions, talking about the role of law in a developing society, the relationship between the state and the person. How did your legal education and the persons who were a part of it influence your life in law?
Wow. Well, that's a good question. There's no doubt the coming to the university and getting exposed to history. Dr. Monroe, Professor Monroe, getting into history and politics. We did introduction to politics, and I did modern political thought, and I did sociology. There's no doubt that it made me even more aware of social issues in the country and the role that law and lawyers can play in addressing those issues. But truth be told, as I said earlier, I want to do international relations with some great idea of serving humanity. So these ideas had been in me, I think, mainly because I had a friend from primary school. I went to KC together, Billy Walker. I don't know if he's here online. William Walker. Even from those days, we used to read the newspapers, and we used to read history, and we had a quote-unquote social consciousness. And I think I was associated with the Human Rights Council from I was a student. You know, so I always tended to have that bent.
So I asked a former teacher about you as a student, and we heard from Andrew Burgess. And Andrew Burgess said to us, and I can at least read it for you. He said, Justice Batt's excellent publication is for me a true expression of his essential self. I met Justice Batts, then David Batts, in the 1980s in my contract law tutorials. I soon discovered that Batts, as we all called him, was defined by two unmistakable characteristics. These were his intellectual inquisitiveness and his Lord Denning-like sense that the highest justification for the law was its use as a vehicle for justice and fairness for the ordinary person. Justice Batt's book springs from these two essences. It is, in my view, a veritable tour de force, and I congratulate Justice Batts on the work, which should have a wide Caribbean readership. So you end up graduating from the Faculty of Law in 1984, from the Norman Manley Law School in 1986. We had images before of you soon after your call to the bar. You and Michelle get married the year after you complete your legal education. You have 3 children. Jordan, who is here, is a certified audio engineer working in holistic health. Renee, who's recently completed her dental surgery studies in Brazil. And Brian, who is a student at the UWI as well. And I learned this expression from one of my students this semester, is a gamer. We also have an image of you with colleagues, including Ransford Braham at the Privy Council, because you spent decades in private practice. In a leading law firm, Livingston, Alexander and Levy, you're lead counsel for the Jamaica Bar Association in the CCJ case, which every student knows by the end of their first year, Independent Jamaica Council for Human Rights and Marshall Burnett, which in 2005 held that the constitutional amendment introduced in the appellate jurisdiction of the CCJ in Jamaica was unconstitutional. In 2010, you were the lead counsel, and of course, many of our students also strongly associate that case with Dr. Lloyd Barnett. In 2010, you were the lead counsel for the Office of Utilities Regulation in an important case establishing the independence of the regulator. And this is all of you at the Privy Council where you won. But in 2012, you took Silk, having been a partner at Livingston Alexander for some time. So my question is, why join the judiciary at this key moment of progress and success in the legal profession?
Okay. I've sometimes asked myself that question. I remember my daughter at the time, because we had a family meeting before and she said, I can't understand why somebody going to leave a higher paying job for a lower paying one. Because I had to explain to them that I'm going into the public service and there will be adjustments. Before I continue, I just want to say, boy, I appreciate, I don't know how you got Andrew Burgess to do anything.
Bear in mind that Justice Burgess may be online.
Justice Burgess. No, he's one of the most, shall I say, use the word critical, or you know, he examines and he criticizes, and in fact, he introduced the seminar method of teaching to me. I had never come across it before. He didn't give lectures.
Yeah. Are there others who Andrew Burgess taught in the room or online?
I mean, but he's great, he's brilliant, you know, and I went on to do revenue law with him. So thank you, I would say Justice Burgess, if you are online. Yes, now why did I leave? Well, the truth be told, I enjoyed my 28 years practice with Livingston, Alexander and Levy. I worked nowhere else as a lawyer. Working with R.N.A. Enriquez, now KC, then QC, Jocelyn O'Reilly, Alan Wood. I mean, you couldn't help but learn. And they taught you the value of being thorough, preparing. You know, excellence was the watchword, and service to the client. But somewhere along the line, I decided that I didn't want at 50 to be still articulating before a judge. Every time you appear in court, it's almost as if you are a student taking an exam. You prepare, you do work, you get witnesses, and there you present your case. And the jury or the judge is now going to mark the script. And you win or you lose, you know. And I don't my wife told me it's my ego, but I didn't like losing, you know. So I said at some point I want to be the one marking the script. Plus, once I started studying law, and you mentioned, or was it Andrew said Denning, I always was fascinated by the judgments of the great judges. And I always, as a student, wanted to be, just imagine myself being the one writing those judgments. So it was an aspiration that, and when I told my partners that this is what I wanted, I don't think many of them took me seriously. But then why take silk? Well, what happened is, the truth is, I applied, I was interviewed, I think I was 45, 46, and years of age. And the interview went well, and the commission told me, you know, yeah, man. But guess what? We don't have any office for you, you know. I said, what do you mean you don't have enough? You know, the judges, and Justice Basic is here, the public will be shocked to learn that Jamaican judges, for many years, play musical chairs with the office. When a judge goes out on circuit, they bring another judge in the office. I'm talking about the desk that you sit around and do your work, you know. Judges did not have offices. So they told me, if you come on board, we don't really have an office for you. So wait a while, because the government has promised us a new building, and when we can give you an office, you know. So I said, all right. I took it to mean they won't be employing anybody else as a judge until offices were available. So I went on practicing, you know, 1 year passed, 2 year passed, and then I saw other judges being appointed. So I came to the conclusion that they had either forgotten about me or, you know. So it was suggested to me that I apply for silk. Silk means to apply to become a Queen's Counsel, now King's Counsel, which really is a rank in the legal profession to recognize excellence. And so with the encouragement of others, I put in the application, thinking, well, this judging is behind me, so I may as well move on. But when I put in the application, it was accepted, but then I got a call from the then Chief Justice. You're not interested in becoming a judge again? I see you have applied for Queen's Counsel. You're not interested? So I said, yes. But I didn't hear anything more from you guys, you know. So she said, no, we're still interested in you. You still want to come when you want to start. And I told her as soon as you wanted me. So the result is I enjoyed the rank of Queen's Counsel for what? 3 months or 4 months? But that is it. That's the truth of the matter.
So having spoken a little bit about your journey in law, I wanted to turn to some constitutional questions. And I mean, before we do, tell us why you wrote this book and who you wrote it for.
Excuse me. Well, the title speaks for itself. From the day I started studying law, from the first, because one of the foundational courses is constitutional law. You do that at the time, I don't know when they do it now, but at the time you did it in first year. And I was like, why am I only knowing all of this now? I am, 18, 19? I went to primary school, high school, a good high school, sixth form. And somebody, why am I only learning these things now? So from then, and then as I grew in my practice, I realized that this lack of knowledge was not me. You know, managers, the people who come to you as clients, you know, people, doctors, you thought had no sense of most of this. The English have a publication, Learning the Law, that little book they used to give us. And it's all about English, learning the law. And they have another one, I don't remember the name, that they use for A-level law. So the seed of this document, this project, was within me almost from the first year studying law. And then now, and my colleague, Mr. Glenn Brown, may not like when I say this. When I became a judge, I found I had a little more time on my hands. In private practice, you have how many clients dealing, how many dealing at the same time, and you really have not that much control over your time because your client is demanding. With the new communication, you work 7 days a week. But as a judge, I found I had more time. And so after a particular case, and I mentioned it in the book, I decided enough is enough. I'm going to try to make my contribution. Because there was no other book at the time. I think in the last 2 years, 2 really good civics books have come out, which, you know, so other people obviously saw the need as well. And just to end the answer, I started the project in 2017. And I recall my daughter, I gave her the draft to read, and she said, Daddy, who you say this book is for? I said, the ordinary Jamaican. She said, well, I'm in university and I don't understand a word. So that was sort of discouraged me. So I put it down. And then COVID came along. I was at home with nothing to do, nowhere to go. And I picked it up back, and I broke the back of it in that period of lockdown.
Productive lockdown.
Yeah.
I wanted, particularly as you are talking about the idea of judges writing books, to hear from President of the CCJ, the Honorable Mr. Justice Adrian Saunders.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, I've known Justice Batts for many years, and I readily welcomed the opportunity to write the foreword to his new book. As I said in my foreword, the workings of the Constitution seriously affect every single Jamaican every minute of every day. This means that it is not enough for only judges and lawyers, parliamentarians and government officials to understand what the Constitution says and how it works. we have an obligation to have every Jamaican have some understanding of that precious and highest law. Upon reading this book by Justice Batts, it struck me that at every step of the way, he drew a link between the struggles of the people of Jamaica and the country's constitutional and legal advancement. His book properly places ordinary Jamaicans at the center of the events fashioning their destiny. You know, I and many of my judicial colleagues have authored or co-authored books. And some persons have raised the question of whether such writings by judges are appropriate, whether they amount to prejudging legal issues. I suppose we can have different views on this. In my own view, prejudging, judicial bias, that is a trait one can be trained to avoid. And the better judges take that training to heart. Judicial silence is just as much a poor guarantee of impartiality as extrajudicial writing can be considered an indication of bias. I think the judges have a perspective on the law that neither academics nor practitioners have, and they can certainly offer that perspective without compromising their independence or getting into the fray. Society should not be deprived of that perspective, and so I welcome this publication by my dear friend, Justice Batts, and I hope everyone enjoys it. Thank you very much.
So thanks to the president of the CCJ, and you've heard this idea, which he has addressed, that there is a concern for some about extrajudicial writings by sitting judges and whether it introduces questions of prejudging issues. We heard his perspective. What's yours? Why write, given this concern which some have?
Yes. Adrian, Justice Saunders is a brilliant judge, one of the brightest minds in the Caribbean. And he displayed that even from he was at first instance. And it has been my pleasure to have met him, to have known him over the years, and to have had even academic exchanges. And when he agreed to do the foreword for the book, it was a great honor. Yes. Let me say that.
When you say that, before you continue, many students have read his judgment in Hughes and Spence, which is cited over and over by courts above, particularly the Privy Council. Okay. And he sat on the Court of Appeal. Actually, he was pulled up from the High Court to sit on that case, a judgment which has endured with plenty meaning. So agreeing with you.
Yes, all right. So this question, why write, given the fact that I'm a judge? Truth of the matter is I never gave that issue much thought at the time I was doing this thing. It occurred to me when the manuscript was about finished now, and I was like, you know, what will people say? So you notice that in my, the introduction, I just address a paragraph and reference other judges who have written in other jurisdictions. You know, Justice Saunders himself has written, Lord Denning, Bingham. Denning got himself in trouble eventually, but he had written about 5 or 6 books before. Well, this particular book, there was nobody else writing it. So I thought it was necessary. I thought it was necessary to do this, to fill a gap in order so Jamaican people, every Jamaican can have a context. You're in high school, you graduate, you come out into the world. You should have a context that other than what you see on the television or read about in English books. Why am I here? What is my role? Where do I fit in? And what does the law provide? Where are my rights? So, but that's not the only time a judge should write, in my view. I think we are small societies in the Caribbean. In Jamaica's case, we have suffered a serious brain drain, right? Truth be told, I wasn't the brightest in my class. But if you canvass Jamaica, the brightest, other than Winston, I've gone abroad. Right? So we have suffered brain drain. So we cannot afford the luxury of having the brightest and best judges in ivory towers, keeping themselves to themselves. That's my view. And therefore, I think there's a role and a place for us to share our knowledge, our experience, not just in writing books, but getting involved in civic organizations and lending the weight of your experience, your integrity, and your sense of how things should be in other spheres of life other than just in the ivory tower of the courtroom. And that's my unapologetic view. I think the good sense of each judge will determine, will ensure rather, that the whole question of bias and prejudging of issues, because that is really the concern, that when a judge comes out now and writes a book, he's going to prejudge cases that may be coming before him, or he may display a bias in favor of one political party or one interest group or another. But the good sense of the judge will prevent, in my view, that happening. And if the person doesn't have the good sense to avoid that, then maybe he shouldn't be a judge.
Thank you very much. You mentioned Glanville Williams. Many of us,
Oh, yes,
this was one of the first things we read in the Faculty of Law. English law, learning the law, is now probably in the 18th or 17th edition. And your book serves for many of us as a valuable introduction to law, even if you're going to study law, and particularly if you're an ordinary citizen. We asked a few persons what they thought of the project of public legal education and early legal education. So we're going to hear from Deputy Director of Public Prosecution, Mr. Jeremy Taylor, King's Counsel. We're also going to hear from a colleague in the Faculty of Law, Gabrielle Elliott Williams, who is in London now but online. And we'll also hear from 3 recent graduates of the Faculty of Law who will join us in a video recording. One is here, Akila Southwell.
Mr. Justice Batts, in Chapter 7, takes the reader through the trial process that is both civil and criminal by adopting a very layered, step-by-step method. In this chapter, he manages to inform his reader how the processes are started in both courts, how the matters are tried, the rules of evidence, and how evidence is elicited, and also makes known his views on expert evidence. He also elaborates on the open justice principle that, except for a minority of cases, all citizens may walk into a courthouse and watch a case. This is a theme with which he ends the chapter. He also highlights that not every case needs to be the subject of litigation, and highlights alternative dispute resolution and mediation. This book, The Law and Constitution for Every Jamaican, is written for the layman interested in law or general affairs. The author anticipates that they may come from all backgrounds: the market vendor at her stall, the farmer in his field, the primary or high school student doing social studies or civics, or the tertiary educated citizen without any background in law. This book is accessible and unintimidating. Its print is large, its size speaks readable and not textbook, and its language is simple and not simplistic. and does not condescend to the reader. I would recommend that all citizens of Jamaica acquire a copy of the Constitution and this book and read them side by side.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Elliott Williams. I am a lecturer at Mona Law. In the past, I have taught law and legal systems, Commonwealth Caribbean human rights law, and advanced legal writing. The law and constitution for every Jamaican is a valuable entry point for prospective law students. It's a potential entry point for the average person because it makes our system of laws much more accessible. It informs persons about their rights and the state's obligations. Justice Batts, in my view, offers a useful overview of the colonial origins and evolution of our legal system, Jamaica's constitutional development and the road to independence, rights and the rule of law, among other things. He provides a sort of information about the law, legal system, and the Constitution that can aid Jamaicans in understanding our system of constitutional government, how to protect the rule of law, and how to vindicate guaranteed constitutional rights. I wish to commend this book to you and to students beginning to learn about the law and legal systems of the Caribbean.
Hello, everyone. My name is Akila Southwell, and I'm from Antigua.
Hi, my name is Sydney Fraser, and I am from Guyana.
I'm Ronaldo Richards, and I'm Jamaican.
All three of us just completed the LLB at Mona Law and were summer fellows with the Faculty of Law UB Rights Advocacy Project. We all spent time in Guyana working on community legal education with underserved and disadvantaged communities in Georgetown and Berbice.
We now have a better sense why books like that of Justice Batts is so important. While in Guyana, we noticed that the law could disenfranchise and marginalize, but legal education for every Caribbean person could be a source of empowerment.
To that end, I agree with President Saunders that the Constitution is the fundamental organizing document of the society, and it's important for every citizen to be aware of it. Justice Batts himself in the Ermund's case went further to clarify police power when stopping and searching, and he revealed how much the Jamaican society needed this important clarification.
In his text, Justice Batts recognizes the importance of human rights and its relationship to the rule of law. In a world of increasing inequality, violence, and discrimination, laws must be equal, transparent, and accessible. To have a just society, the law must apply to the governed and the governor, and the rights of every person must be respected.
As Akila said, an important part of the rule of law is ensuring that the law is accessible. However, because of the way in which the law is written and presented, the reality is that most citizens cannot understand how the law applies to them. This is how Justice Batts' book stood out to me. He addresses questions that the average citizen may have, including how to interact with the police and even how to make a will.
In closing, although the book focuses on Jamaica, it is worth reading across the Caribbean.
Thank you very much. So from a group of students who are now beginning their journey at the Council of Legal Education's law schools, to the late Professor Simeon McIntosh, our most prominent constitutional theorist, former dean of the Faculty of Law, he famously said, and this may also be Professor Monroe's view to some extent, he said, these constitutions are not our own. He said that they are not the product of our own effort at collective self-definition and self-interpretation. Professor Margaret Mary, I don't know if she taught you, complained that the constitutions didn't come from the Caribbean soil, that they were not autochthonous. There were two words in the first year you struggled with as a law student, justiciable and autochthonous. You sound as if you come close to some of these ideas. You say in your book, and I quote you, Jamaica's independence followed 400 years of European blunder, military invasion. Plunder, my apologies. Freudian slip. Military invasion, maroon wars, slave revolts, popular uprisings, and civil disturbance precipitated changes to its system of governance in that period. The 1962 Constitution, however, reflected an almost seamless continuation of the governmental structure previously in place. Dr. Lloyd Barnett argues that some of the innovations, such as the entrenchment of the position of the leader of the opposition, that these demonstrate the existence of a local grundnorm in our Constitution. Jamaican people, however, you say, never approved this Constitution by a direct vote. It was drafted by the representatives of and/or persons appointed by the two political parties. It was done in a rush with a desire to continue the same structure of government. There was perhaps insufficient regard for the fact that the majority had long been excluded from governance and may well have expected real change to their political, social, and of course, economic circumstances. So you say this, and in another moment, let's take the NIDS case. In your judgment, you also say it is appropriate to remind ourselves that the rights contained in the Constitution are the product of 400 years of struggle, conflict, and sacrifice by the people of Jamaica. So how is the Constitution not ours? Because we had little direct involvement in 1962, and also ours, the product of centuries of struggle. How do you understand the legitimacy of the Jamaican Constitution and other Caribbean constitutions like it?
Yes, you're trying to get me in trouble now. All right. By the way, my parents are now here, George and Clover Batts. And it certainly encouraged me to read from very early. I was actually started reading before I even entered basic school, you know. So my full family is here now, and I give thanks for that. All right, so I'm trying to, you know, what I do while I formulate my thoughts on that. All right, I never questioned the legitimacy of our Constitution, and nor in the book do I suggest that the Constitution is structurally defective. In fact, on the contrary, I point out that since 1944, and it has really been the same constitutional matrix. As I said, 1962 didn't mark any dramatic change in how the governance structure operated. So we can count from 1944. We have had peaceful transitions of power regularly in the constitutionally prescribed period. And this is an exceptional thing if you look at the broad context of nations that move through this independence process from the 1940s after World War II until now. So we have a proud record, and I don't think it could credibly be argued, therefore, that our Constitution is fundamentally defective. If it was, then arguably we wouldn't have had this level of success. But what I do think and say is that the process by which the Constitution was created and engineered was more akin to the imposition that Antoine speaks about in her book than the creation from within that is probably more desirable. And the significance of this is, to my mind, one of the reasons it could be, and social scientists would have to do those studies. I don't know, Professor Monroe is here, he can tell you if there are such studies. But could it be that the disaffection, this sense of not belonging, the urban ghetto rebellion, and maybe not just a ghetto thing either, among young people, the disconnect with our society. I mean, the last few elections, the amount of people participating have been growing smaller and smaller. Why is that? Could it be that it is connected to the fact that the Constitution was not created by a process of public consultation? Nobody voted in a plebiscite to make this Constitution ours. Constitution is an order in council issued by Her Majesty the Queen in England. It's not something that was voted for, accepted, debated here in Jamaica. It was attached and presented. Yes, our delegates drafted it and took the draft up there and finished it up. But it's not a bad document. But my argument, and I may be wrong, is that had the same identical thing been brought to the people of Jamaica, you have consultations across the parishes, you have discussions, and then you have a vote to say, let us create this document and make it ours. That process, you would have had an entire generation of Jamaicans who have said, this is ours, I know what it contains, I know what my rights and obligations are, and maybe they would have passed that on to their children, and so on and so forth. And then to compound the matter, after 1962, I mean, I read and I am told, because not much was done to educate the population about the document. So lawyers knew what it contained, but pretty much nobody else did. So that's my argument.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Can I change the tempo a little bit?
Yes, please.
You didn't do Schools Challenge, but I want to challenge you. In other words, I want to put you in exactly the position you ran away from in 2012 to a one-sentence answer to a concept in constitutional law. And so this is the challenge you didn't take in high school, which I'm putting you to. One sentence in response.
But in fairness, I did practice with them, you know.
You practice?
Yes, I don't see Professor Vassian here, but he was the coach. So I was like, 12th man.
Yes.
Yes, so I would go to the practice sessions with them, because they were all my friends.
Yes.
But I didn't. There was some point of principle why, I don't quite remember what it was. But yes. I didn't think that was what I wanted to do. Well, but then those guys were brilliant. I don't think maybe I wouldn't have made the team anyway.
Well, let's check. And so a one-sentence answer to a couple of key ideas. I want to hear your thoughts. Rule of law. One sentence, no semicolons.
Wow.
So no add up sentence, which one ends up being four. Rule of law.
Necessary for democracy to succeed.
Due process.
Fairness and essential to the rule of law.
The importance of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, Chapter 3 of the Jamaica Constitution.
To ensure that as a democracy, we enjoy liberty, and it should be for everybody equally.
The independence of the judiciary.
necessary to ensure that we can all enjoy the rights enshrined in the Constitution you just mentioned.
Thank you very much, Justice Batts.
Feel?
I wanted to end our chat by talking a little bit about judging in a constitutional democracy. Interestingly, you say less about judging than I might have thought. And so I think this is a wonderful chance to hear more. What role do judges play in our democracy, particularly in maintaining the rule of law? You've alluded to it.
All right. The rule of law encompasses a group of ideas. It is rule of law, 3 words, but it implies a lot more. It implies that the obligations of each citizen to the other are the same across the board. So that if you have a contract with a great big corporation and that corporation breaches that contract with you, you are entitled under the rule of law to the same justice and to have it regardless of the fact that that corporation is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. And this applies so that the state, the government, you are entitled, if you have a dispute with the state, to go there and get redress, because the law is what will determine the right or wrong of the situation, not the person with power. So you contrast the rule of law to the rule of man, in which government or the determination of how things will be is, the determination is by the person with the greater power or the state, either one man or a group of men or one political party. So that's I'm just setting this stage for those who may not naturally understand what we're talking about. So the rule of law basically avoids arbitrariness or rule by dictators or by those with power. That's what the rule of law implies. But to achieve that, it's necessary that the person or persons who are going to rule on the law or who are going to determine the disputes, those persons of necessity must be outside of that power base. It must be somebody or some institution other than the powerful corporation or the powerful government. So the structure, and this has been evolved over history in different societies in different ways, but in this 21st century, the way that that is managed is to create a judiciary and to try to ensure that that judiciary is able to function independently and not on the instruction of any power broker. So, role of the judge in our society is to dispense justice fairly and impartially, regardless of who is the power broker or the balance of forces before appearing before the judge.
Mm-hmm. What does being a judge involve? You know, many of your brothers and sisters are here online from different parts of the Caribbean, and some are with you here today. What does being a judge involve? What are the qualities that you have learned matter most to judging?
Well, you know, I'm only a judge since 2012. A friend lent years long before that. But I've seen judging from both sides. I've been a lawyer up here before judges. Now I'm a judge. Well, patience. I would say patience. The judge should listen to both sides. You know, there is a phrase I came across in one of the cases. You must judge the cause and not the man, because even a very bad man can have a good cause. Not because when a man come before you, you realize you have sentenced him to prison 2-3 times already. You're going to say, man, you're wasting my time. No, you need to have that patience. Sometimes you have annoying lawyers. Yes, and you're tempted to punish the lawyer by, no, you have to have patience. Patience, listen to the argument. A judge needs to have patience. A judge needs to be honest. It sounds obvious, but sometimes it's not so easy to be honest. You have to be true to the oath that you took to uphold the law and the Constitution, and not to cut any corner, not to achieve a certain policy objective that you think may be good for everybody. No. Be honest in your construction of the statute, in your application of the law, in your thing. A judge should well, I think those patience, honesty, those to me are the cardinal things. And if the judge knows a little law, is a bonus. But to my mind, because the bench is as strong as the bar that appears before it. And if you're patient and you take your time and you seriously consider the arguments, you will do all right.
I have a follow-up question. And Sir Fred Phillips said that in the Caribbean, judges, people have very high expectations of judges. In one of his books, he says, approximating superhuman qualities. He says you need to be judicious, well-read, restrained in manner and language, aloof without being grave, erudite, humane, learned, independent, impartial, and humble, all rolled in one. In our constitutional law book, we suggested that we thought that judges needed to stand apart from societal pressures and political interference, but that the legitimacy of the judiciary also depended on judges who had empathy and a keen understanding of the communities that they served. Professor Keith Patchett, who was the first dean of the faculty, famously said in a 1975 article on the independence of the judiciary that he thought it was healthy for the society to see the judge on the beach in his short pants. Now, of course, today, we must be talking about both women and men judges, but I do want to ask you about this idea that it's we did see an image in the short pants playing football, about the importance, if at all, of judges being part of their societies while still being independent. Is that possible? Or should the judge be in shirt and tie and quite separate from others?
Okay. While you're reading that, I thought of another critical, I think, aspect to judging, and that is, I think judges should be polite. Should be polite. It does something for the impression and the acceptance even of your decision, rather than when you come across as just being a bully. Not that I'm saying our judges, we have any impolite judges, right then? But in my practice, I found that the judges who were polite got their message across much better. All right, to get to your point now.
Short pants.
Yeah, short pants issue. You know, Tracy, I am of the view that one of the techniques of colonialism was, you know, people claim how people were disciplined but if you're responding to authority through fear, is that what you want in your society? And this is what colonialism was all about. Slavery was not a very nice thing, and you could only control a society where you have approximately, at one stage, 200,000. The ratio was 200,000 to like 10,000. And then after slavery, the ratio was probably even greater. How do you maintain, you know, control? It's fear. Force, fear, and then entrenched ignorance. So you don't educate. And if the churches come and try to teach them to read Bible, you sometimes burn down the church and run away the religious leaders. These things used to happen in our history. So some of the religious leaders, especially the Baptists, were at one time, you know, attacked. So this continued into colonialism. So yes, we decided to build some schools now that slavery is abolished. But the schools are geared to what? To create hewers of wood and drawers of water. You're not expecting that these guys are going to become lawyers. Not the masses of the people. So that's a situation that is great. And part of that now is to have a system of law and law enforcement which perpetuates and continues that relationship. You do what I say. You behave yourself. Because if not, the consequences are going to be lashes with the tambourine switch. And that was a legal, lawful penalty on the books right up into the 80s or 90s. The lash with the tambourine switch. Now, is this what we want to continue into our independence as a people? That we have a society, yes, we have a constitution, yes, we are democratic, yes, we elect our own government, but we must continue to fear those in authority. That's the basis that we're going to achieve a quote-unquote disciplined society. I think respect for law and order and discipline should come through pride. We should obey the police officer because we are proud he's a police officer. We should obey the order of the court because we are proud that this is our court and our court has said so. Just as how we admire Usain Bolt and Merlin Ottey and all these runners, because we identify them as one of us. That, to my mind, is the ideal. See, that's how we, as a society, should be looking at our institutions. And it extends not just to judges, but we should be proud of our Prime Minister, whoever he is.
Or she is.
Or she is, I beg your pardon, or she. But that's so, to answer your question, yes, I think he's right. Judge should, I mean, you go supermarket, judges, I mean, play football. Why not? Why not? This aloofness and this withdrawal is part of the keeping the mystery of it. You know, we're not any different. We are just like you. And when I think that that idea becomes embedded, I think we will have a better society.
My penultimate question, and another one-sentence answer.
Get it too long?
Yeah. In a recent conversation with me where you formed the view that I was being a little too serious and single-minded, neither of which are things I could deny being. You said to me, Tracy, I hope you have time for Bob and Dennis, meaning Bob Marley and Dennis Brown. So, single sentence answer, what do these icons mean to you?
What do these icons mean to me?
Young people know Dennis Morrison?
Freedom.
Dennis
Brown.
Dennis Brown? Yes?
Everybody know Dennis Brown, right?
Okay, good.
You should. Good. No, Dennis Brown and Bob Marley, I think, represent freedom. They represent freedom. They are part of a generation who decided that they didn't want to accept the religion as it has been passed down. They didn't want to accept the dictate of society as to where they should be. Yes. And they made a success of it. Yeah. And so, yeah, freedom.
Freedom. Last question. One bit of advice for the many people in the room, some joining online, some who will watch this later, who are becoming lawyers, thinking about coming to the Faculty of Law to study law. One bit of advice to a CAPE student, a law student, a new attorney.
A new attorney, but those are different. To the students, I would say that you are embarking on a profession which, as my Mr. Donald Shah Schmidt, now King's Counsel, used to say to me, the law is a hard taskmaster. The law is a hard, and it is, I realize that is so true. The practice of the law requires preparation, and preparation. You have to know your case. You have to know your case better than the witness who you're going to cross-examine. So you're going to cross-examine a doctor in a situation where someone is alleged to have died of something. You go to the medical library up there, and as I have had to do, and you learn all about that disease. More so at the point in time when you're cross-examining that doctor, who probably hasn't gone back to look at a book on that for a while, and at that point in time, you know more about it. So you're embarking on a profession that requires arts. Even if you're not a court lawyer, when it comes to documents and drafting, you have to do your research, read every word, think it over. But it's not just about hard work, it's also about integrity. The profession is not a very forgiving one. And you make one slip, in cricket, if you chuck one, instead of bowl all six, you chuck one. You just need to be caught once, chucking one. And all the good you have done before, the 1,000 cases that you may have done excellently before, nobody's going to remember them. They're going to remember the one you chuck. So maintain your integrity and the canons of professions. And remain true to your calling, so that at the end of the day, if you do all those three things, you remain true to what you know is right, you prepare your cases, and you don't bend that elbow. You maintain your integrity. The rewards will come.
Thank you very much, Justice Batts. Can you join me all in thanking Justice Batts? Great advice for many who will be joining the profession soon. Thanks to all of you who have joined us online and in person. Can I hand back to you, Justice Beswick?
What a mesmerizing conversation. It just sucked, well, for me, I was just totally sucked in. Weren't you all? It was amazing. So honestly delivered, so genuinely delivered. A real pleasure to have been here. It was worth going through all the water that we had to go through here in Jamaica, and it was worth all the delay that our friends online had to endure. Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson and Justice Batts. We want to remember that we have friends online, and they were invited to make comments. Any comments, Mr. Foreman, that we should share at this time?
Yes, there are quite a few comments. First of all, I think I should mention comments from certain sections of the Iva Allen, for example, wants to let you know that there are many Purple Hearts watching online in support of their very own. Some of them include Francis Coke, Helen Douglas, and Ransford Graham, all of whom send you greetings. There are persons from many places. From New York, Professor Albert Fiaggio sends greetings from the Big Apple, as well Antigua and Barbuda, some persons in traffic, presumably from Jamaica. That was earlier in the session. We've seen comments as well from a number of persons. Andre Earl says, thanks, Justice Batts, for your sacrifice, skill, and single-mindedness in giving us this wonderful book, which is an essential addition to the reading list of every Jamaican. Congratulations. Daniel Shireen says that the book is timely, is needed, and certainly timely, and thanks you for making the information available. Professor Winston Anderson, judge of the CCJ, says, excellent conversation. Thank you, Justice Batts, and to you, Ms. Robinson. Andrea Moore and others make similar comments. There are questions as well. I'll highlight two of them. One from David Peart. David Peart says, how has the judicial system changed over the last 60 years, and what changes do you see are needed in the future? And Donna Mattis asks, has the time come to reform the common law to perhaps give the judge an investigative role, for example, and less that of a referee? So those two questions, and then I know there are some questions from the audience as well.
Sure, change over the last 60 years. Well, you know, I was born in 1962, so my friend Richard Small will be better able to talk about it, or Glenn there. But from what I understand, first of all, it has grown. You know, there were far fewer judges back in the day. Secondly, we look and speak a little differently. What I understood is that back in the 50s and 60s, there were many judges, English judges, who would come here during that time and in the hot periods go back to England from whence they came before they returned. And a big change, of course, is the result of the fact that because of the foresight of Dr. Lloyd Barnett and his generation, we started training our own lawyers, as Tracy mentioned, in the early 70s, so that by natural process, the judiciary is now really Jamaican and homegrown, I should say West Indian and homegrown. But otherwise, I suspect we function pretty much in the same way. Now, the other question, whether there should be some changes. Yes, change is good, and there are changes being made in the way we do things. Computerization makes that necessary, but also we have started on mediation is now a big thing. Mediation never existed as part of our system even 20 years ago, but now mediation is compulsory when you're having civil litigation, which is to sort of lessen the load and encourage people to settle disputes without necessarily the acrimony of a trial. And I know the present Chief Justice is involved, we are all involved, in a process of adjusting the way we organize so that in the recent past, a judge, well, you heard me talk about the offices, but judges would move from one court to another almost every other week. So you'd spend 2 weeks in civil, doing civil cases, that's lawsuits, and the following week you are sent out on circuit, and you may be 2-3 different circuits across the island doing criminal cases. And you may not get back into a civil court for another 6 months. And this was how it was organized. And that may have been fine when you had 10 judges. But now we have what? Over 40. And the law, in the meantime, the rules have become far more technical. And the caseload. So we are moving to a situation now where judges will specialize and spend a longer time in a particular court. So it should enhance efficiency, and it should enhance the judge's skill set if he's doing the same thing for a longer time. So there are changes, and there are others that may be desirable. Does that complete, I think? Yes? No, there was a question about the common law. Yes, that question relates to whether a judge should become more of an investigator. What happened is that in our English system that we have inherited, the judge acts more like an umpire. So the concept is you have two warring parties. You have the plaintiff or the prosecutor, and you have the defense. And each is putting forward evidence to try to prove the case. And they do it to the tribunal, either with the judge and jury or the judge alone. And the role of the judge is to see that the rules are kept and everything is fair. He does not get involved unduly. Contrast that to the system across the English Channel on the European continent, where the judge is more a participant in the matter, especially when it comes to criminal cases. So the judge, as I understand it in the civil law tradition, will actually act as his duty is to he even has the power to call witnesses. And he probes and he gets involved in the search for truth, far more than the English counterpart. So the question was asking whether I thought that we should move towards a more, let us call it, activist role for the judge. I don't think so, but maybe that's because this is all I know. There may be advantages to the other system, but if I'm to answer the question, I'm quite happy with the role I play. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll take one more online question and then a question from a student, and then we'll see if there are any persons in the audience. Xavier Allen asks, did the writing of this book provide any clarity for you in any area of law or life? It's an interesting one. And if you want to go.
Yes, let me just, before, yes, I learned so much. In fact, I had to actually, purchase a book to clarify a certain area in the course of which arose. So yes, in writing and researching, it clarified my own role as a judge in many respects, yes.
So we'll now move to some questions from students. I'll take one from a high school student. Has the flavor of an assignment question, but we'll see.
Mine is your assignment.
I'll make some changes. Do you think the justice system in Jamaica is unjust? And if so, what do you think can be done to correct that? And the next question will come from a Mona Law student, Jade Simmons, who is in our...
Late departed, but dear senior Douglas Brandon. And it had been a case that it took many years. In fact, what I'm about to tell you will just demonstrate it. So here's the client. There was some reason why there was a break, some adjournment, and I'm sitting with the client. And she turns to me, and she says, she's my client, She says, Mr. Batts, when this case started, I was 45. I am now 55 years old. Whether we win or lose, I have lost. And that is one of the issues with our system, which we are working hard to deal with, the question of delay. Inherent in delay is injustice. So in that broad sense, but I think there has been improvement and there will continue to be improvement in that regard. The second example, which may be a little more controversial.
You sure you want to say it?
Yes, I've started, so I may as well go. I represented, coincidentally, 2 different clans in the same context within a matter of a month. One client was a big businessman, a lot of money. The other client was somebody's gardener who had, allegedly hit his girlfriend, and both of them were incarcerated, locked up. Police locked them up. Both of them were locked up on the Wednesday in the middle of the week. In both cases, the police did not bring them before the court immediately. So I had to apply for habeas corpus. 2 different unrelated cases. With the one with the big, in both of them, when I applied for habeas corpus, the judge did not, it was a parish court judge, did not immediately. The habeas corpus is a process whereby you can apply to the court to bring the person who is incarcerated before the court so that the authorities can justify the arrest. So they must bring the person physically to court and explain to the judge why they have the person in arrest. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll be released, but they have to justify to the judge the reason for it and show to the judge the person is here alive and well, but this is the reason for it. That's what habeas corpus is. And if they can't justify it, the judge will order the release. In both cases, the judge refused to hear the application on the day. The application was made like the Thursday or the Friday. Refused to hear the application and adjourned the application to the following Monday, which meant in both cases, both persons should have spent the weekend in prison, in the lockup. Because the judge adjourned the application to the Monday. For whatever reason, I don't remember what particular reason why the police explained why they couldn't bring the person before the court. Well, the businessman, when I was dejected and left court saying, well, you know, I got a call telling me, don't worry about it. He's free. He got station bail. Shall I tell you? The gardener, you know, I had to make the application the Monday, and he spent the weekend in the lockup. So I use that example to show that there is still, well, that those cases would have been over 20 years ago. So at that time, at least, there is an imbalance in terms of the effect of purchasing power and whether or not we are playing on a level field. The police were prepared to exercise their discretion in one way in respect of the businessman and in another way in respect of the gardener. So we still have a way to go, because to have a just society, to apply the rule of law, it should be done equally, regardless of status, wealth, position. But I think that we have come a very long way in this country, and overall, especially if you compare us to other places, justice is done more often than it is not done in Jamaica.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Justice Batts.
Yes,
I'm Jade Simmons. I'm a current second-year student here at the Faculty of Law. My question to you is, what do you believe can be done to, let's say, promote a greater level of inclusivity in the process of constitutional reform?
Well, we had a constitutional reform exercise which lasted about 10 years. The discussion about the new Charter of Rights, I think it's approximately that period. I see some of the people present who were involved in that process. And it tended to center around the work of Parliament and submissions to Parliament by various interest groups. So that is one way. It seems to me that to broaden it, probably one would have to take that sort of discussion out into communities by having public debates, you know. Churches, you know, lodges, service clubs could get involved in the process and invite public speakers and discuss it. I think that would be the best way. And then we have, of course, social media, which I guess young people like you, we could, you know, fashion some thought of discussion using the whole WhatsApp and whatever. We have to be innovative to get people interested enough to participate.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Haile Mikhail Kojo. Many things to many people. I live in Belmont, Westmoreland, and I'm happy for your book, sir. I hope it will help to educate the people, especially in respect of constitutional reform that this young lady has mentioned, and that I have already written a proposed constitution for Republic Jamaica, which all members of Parliament and senators have got a copy of. That was verified by the clerk, Secretary Clerk of Parliament. So I'd like to give you this document, you and Ms. Robinson, and anyone who wants a copy of the full document, you can send a WhatsApp text to 1-876-225-1163. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
The name is at the bottom and my signature. We can discuss afterwards.
So we can perhaps take one more from the audience here, but if not, I hand over to the moderator.
Maurice.
Okay. Oh, we have.
My name is Maurice Saunders. Well, first of all, let me congratulate Mr. Justice Batts for his book. It's needed. We deserve it. And the congratulations are well deserved. Very proud of you. And I can't help but make the observation that sitting on the platform are two persons who in different years, I believe, won the prize for the best student in the legal aid clinic.
Yeah, that's true. You
I
won
think
that
in
prize,
different years.
right?
No, not quite.
I got the legal aid.
Or close to it. But I say that in the context that what we have seen unveiled this evening is a man, an author, who is clearly concerned about people. From his studies in English, in literature, he would have been studying not only English as such, but a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of psychology, learning about characters and how to interact with each other. He would have been building his concern about injustice suffered by persons through that kind of discipline. And certainly, given what I now know about his sojourn on the university campus, it is clear that his interest, apart from searching for something to study, but his interest in the social sciences was perhaps again fed by his concern for people. I know also, I'm pretty sure, that again as a member of the Independent Jamaica Council for Human Rights, again, I think he would have been drawn by his concern for people. The love of his practice as a practitioner. You heard him relate to certain cases. Again, you see a man who is concerned about people's suffering. So it is against that background that I make the observation. Allow me, though, Justice, to make reference to your book. And it's good for the price of $3,000. Not bad, not bad, not bad. And before I read, I just want to recall, though, I think back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a little exercise-styled book written by a couple. I don't remember their names now. I don't know if Richard would recall, or maybe Professor Monroe. But there was a little exercise-style book that was written for the public, very simply, to help to educate the public. But I just mentioned that as a matter of history. But let me refer to page 93 on the section Law in Jamaica Today. The general chapter or section seems to relate to human rights and so. And on page 93, the second paragraph, let me read quickly. The law as established in the Constitution of Jamaica is premised on individual freedom. Great. This means that unless something is prohibited by law, then a person is free to do it. I think I understand it, and in that context, I have no quarrel, but it has caused me to raise a question sign, and I don't know if you'd want to meditate on it. Let me just add this though. May I most respectfully suggest or recommend that in your next edition of this book, you include in that area a little reminder of the contribution of Thomas Aquinas and natural law to the making of laws and human rights, and to remind us generally where human rights come from. I'm among those who believe that the basic human rights, fundamental rights, come from God.
Thank you so much, Mr. Saunders, for their observations.
Thank you.
For your analysis of the man who Justice Batts really is. The man who we love, the man who, and I know I speak confidently for Justice Batts when I say he thanks us all. Thank you, persons online. He's very grateful for the support that he has received. And for our part, we here and online are beneficiaries of a very well-planned evening. And we thank all of those who carefully worked to make it the resounding success that it has been. We have acquired bragging rights, and we must cherish them. We are now able to boast that we were present when the renowned author Justice Batts was introducing his first book to the public. We will be able to boast that on that lovely September evening, as we sat in the lecture hall at the Faculty of Law, at that time, we did not know that Justice Batts would go on to author so many very helpful books on constitutional law. We will boast that we witnessed the mesmerizing and insightful conversation between these two erudite persons. And we will boast that we left the conversation wondering how such a humble, down-to-earth person is able to share such important and vast knowledge in such a simple way that we all can understand. So appreciate our bragging rights. And thank you, Justice Batts, for allowing us to be part of your great beginning as an author and writer. Thank you so much. We are the privileged ones here and online. Thank you all for being here, and stay safe.
Long time, girl, me never see you. Come make me hold your hand. It is a long time, girl, me never see you. Come make me hold your hand. Kneel head, jump round, sit down for tree top, pick up the blossom. Let me hold your hand, girl. Let me hold your hand. All right, Mr. Music, wait on, dear little. Aye. Now you see, that is the Jamaican welcome song. Come make me hold your hand. Now, you have to welcome me, I welcome you. So, you're going to sing with me. Come make me hold your hand. All right, yes, dear. But I don't want to hear anybody say, come let me hold your hand. You see? Because you're going to pile up the culture. No matter with that. Come make me hold your hand. Come make me hold this long time, girl, me never see you. Come let me hold your hand. It's a long time, girl, me never see you. Come let me hold your hand. Feel head jump, cross, sit down, Patrick, and pick up the blossom. Let me hold your hand, girl. Let me hold you. Wheel and turn. This long time, girl, me never see you. Come let me wheel and turn. It's a long time, girl, me never see you. Come let me wheel and turn. Feel head jump, cross, sit down, Patrick, and pick up the blossom. Let me wheel and turn, girl. Let me wheel and now walk and talk. This long time, girl, me never see. Walk and talk. Hold on there, little, hold on. You see what happened? I don't want to hear anybody saying walk and talk. And when I go to Canada, I don't have any trouble with this because they naturally say walk and talk. This long time, girl, me never see. Come let me walk and talk. It's a long time, girl, me never see. Come let me walk and talk. Feel head jump, cross, sit down, Patrick, and pick up the blossom. Let me walk and talk, girl. Let me walk and talk. Now we're coming to the mentor. You know the mentor that go? Ta 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 ta. You know that part? Yes, man. Make me wheel and turn till we tumble down. Make me hold your hand, girl. Make me wheel and turn till we tumble down. Make me hold your hand, girl. Come, wheel and turn till we tumble down. Make me hold your hand, girl. Make me wheel and turn till we tumble down. Make me hold your hand, girl. Oh, thank you, my dear. Thank you so much.